Hey, Giants fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to Talk is Cheap, the show where we discuss all things related to the New York Giants. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Giants, and make sure to bookmark that to get the latest Giants news and analysis. Well, we've reached the autopsy look-ahead show where we're going to wrap up this dreadful 2024 season and turn our attention towards the offseason, including the decision to bring back both Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. And I know those words, if you've been living under a rock, hold your breath. It really did happen. So, yeah, we're going to talk to that a little bit more. With me today is Ryan Novozinsky to break all this down. Ryan, you made it through the season. How are you doing, man?
Chris, I am free from the 2024 Giants tentacles, so to speak. I'm free. I'm free from the shackles. It feels great to not have to watch there. Now I get wild card weekend coming up, and I get the NFL playoffs. I can finally watch good football, and I'm excited. So I'm doing great.
Playoffs, I don't think it's Jim Moore when you put the Giants and playoffs together. Playoffs? Yeah, it's good. This is what football looks like. In case you Giants fans haven't seen it in a while, besides the Indianapolis Colts game, which still, to me, for the life of me, I don't know why they won that game. But yeah, that's what winning football looks like. And hopefully for the Giants, that gets to returns pretty soon. But you have to question now with John Moore's decision about him running out of patience with his general manager and his head coach. He's bringing them back again, and makes you wonder if they're going to make the playoffs next year. We'll get more into that part in a second. But first off, why on earth did Mara decide to stand pat and keep Schoen and Daboll after finishing with a 3-14 record?
Oh man, it's the great conundrum, right? I have no idea. I really don't for you, man. I got nothing. But I mean, to kind of give you an actual answer here, it's he sits there and he says back in late October when he gave them the vote of confidence that he wanted to learn more from his father, Wellington Mara, right? He wanted to learn from him and the patience that he had with some of the coaches. And with this, it was, hey, I guess even if they have had a worse record every year, including a 3-14 record, which had the longest losing streak in Giants history, I'm going to keep that patient mindset. It is not a good decision, especially with the schedule they have coming up. Again, we'll talk about that more. But of course, they play the NFC North teams. They play the Chiefs. They play the Chargers. It is just a hellacious schedule they have coming up. I mean, I quite frankly, I think that we're getting into a situation here where we're basically almost guaranteed to be covering a coaching firing next year. We were kind of spared this offseason, Darryl and I. But next offseason, it's almost a guarantee because, yes, he preached patience, but then he went and said, I don't know how patient I can really be here, basically. I think I botched the quote there, but he basically said, I'm running out of patience, right? John Mara did. So, yeah, with that awful, daunting schedule they have coming up, and Mara basically giving them the playoff or bust decree without saying it, but he pretty much means it. This is just coming to a head with a coaching firing next year, which is, I mean, we get spared this summer, Darryl and I, but next year, I don't know how that's going to work out.
See, my thing is this. I understand that Mara wants to do like his dad did and wants to do patience, but this is not the era of the, say, Lombardis or what have you, or the Chuck Knowles or whatever, where you have guys stick around for like 5, 6, 7 years because you think, oh, this is the way that you need to have you need to run a team. This is the way you need to have this guy, keep these guys around. They've proven it. We've seen in one and done teams. Antonio Pierce was fired after one season. We're seeing Gerard Mayo fired after one season. All these guys that are around, you just don't. I just don't get why the need to say it's like, you know what? Let's stay steadfast here. If the Giants had made the playoffs the previous season, like say this was 2022, they didn't make the playoffs and then they stunk like they did a final one. Okay, I get keeping these guys around because they prove that they did that. This thing has just been like it's like winning a playoff game against the Vikings and then getting walloped in the divisional round shouldn't be your peak, and then you fall down the cliff from there on out. Because if that's the case, then that ain't a mountain. That's a hill. That's like a snow hill that's melted very quickly. And I just don't get that decision to bring them back. But, sometimes you need to really bring in. I feel like, Ryan, we sometimes when we talk about this, it's tough. I think we need another perspective in terms of that. In terms of, what, I think we should make this a super show. What do you think?
Oh, I think so. I think we have a little bit of a surprise for you here, don't we, Chris?
I think so too. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time all season, we have not only Ryan Novozinsky, but we have Darryl Slater to join in. Darryl, man, how you doing?
What's up, Chris? What's up, Ryan? Appreciate you guys getting this kicked off and getting the ball rolling here while I join in. I presume we're talking about the Fed raising interest rates. Is that what we're talking about here?
No. Yes, we're thinking of the bond rates right now. It's a good time to get into bonds in terms of this. Of course, yeah. And if you want junk bonds, you can get the Giants right now. It's probably pretty bad in terms of that.
Yeah, Chris. Good job there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so we can jump right into wherever we were. This is obviously a big picture take on what was obviously a terrible, terrible season, and where do they go from here, right?
Yeah, and then we're talking about that weird decision to keep Schoen and Daboll after that. What do you think? What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think, they split the difference in terms of what would have been the worst option or the best option. Best option, I think, letting both of them go. Worst option is keep Joe Schoen, and they saw how much of a mistake that was in 2020. They retained Dave Gettleman, and they wound up with Joe Judge, who nobody else wanted. And that rule passed on the job. So that's never a good situation when you have a hot seat GM and you're trying to hire a good coach. It typically doesn't work out. So they stayed the course. I think that firing them both would have made sense. They certainly both earned the firing. Getting a quarterback and a coach and a GM on the same timeline is ideal. And that presumes that they will draft a quarterback that might be out of their control a little bit, unless the Penn State kid, Drew Aller, comes out. The two quarterbacks could be gone in the top two. So maybe they go with a bridge quarterback. We'll see. But John Mara talked out of both sides of his mouth. He talked about patience, being patient with his regime. And then he literally said, I'm running out of patience. So he's expecting a significant improvement from a team that I guess they have nowhere to go but up, but it's not like 5 wins is going to save them, keep them around. They're going to have to make a big jump, I would think, to probably at least 7-10 to stick around for 2026. And I just don't know if this roster is capable of that, especially when you look at whatever they're going to do at quarterback. There's no magic solution there in the draft. Likely in free agency, if you look at the most realistic scenarios via trade, not really. So much of that's out of your control. So, I don't see things getting better enough for this regime. They got one more year, but I think this will be the last year ultimately.
All right, so we're all in agreement that Daboll and Schoen should have been moved on, but since we're going to follow the mantra of Mara and getting the patience. Giants I don't know how they're going to succeed, because when you look at the Giants' schedule for 2025, you think, oh, they're on an easier schedule. They're in last place. They're going to do this and that. Well, they're going to improve. Well, they have to play the NFC North teams, which includes the NFC's number 1 seed, the Detroit Lions, the somehow number 5 seed with the Minnesota Vikings, who have 14 wins, by the way. And then you have the Packers, who are coming in with really good records as well, too, and they're in the 7th seed. And not only do you have that, you got the AFC West, who also has the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, the Los Angeles Chargers in the playoffs, and the Denver Broncos in the playoffs. Now, we know every year to year, some teams make it, some teams don't. But that's a really, really tough schedule for them to have. And if you're preaching patience, it's a very good chance that this Giants team and Daboll could get off to a slow start, depending on how the schedule works out, which hasn't been released. It's not going to be released until the spring. So I'm going to ask you, I'll start with you, Darryl, on this one. With Daboll being on a short lease and the so-called patience there, do you think he's going to be fired mid-season if things start out really bad?
I think it's certainly possible. Yeah, I mean, you just rattled off the schedule there, and even just go in the reverse, and you're not necessarily looking at the toughest games. Like, how many even winnable games do they have? Right? They play in Chicago. All right, maybe. Then Dallas, tough. In Denver, tough. In Detroit, tough. They play in Vegas. Okay, that's winnable, I guess. Play in New England, that's winnable. But again, another winnable game that happens to be on the road. They play in New Orleans. Yeah, maybe. Again, it's on the road. The home schedule is so brutal. Obviously, Dallas, Philly, Washington, Green Bay, Minnesota. You rattle it off. The Chiefs at home, the Chargers at home, the Niners at home. Obviously, they play in Philly and Washington. So they could very easily go 0-8 at home a year after going 1-8. And what would that mean? I mean, I know Ryan tweeted, like, hopefully this is the last story I'll be writing on plane banners. Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think we should. I don't think we should be banking on that, given the how this home schedule looks and the schedule overall. I mean, the number of winnable games, I guess, like 4, right? In Chicago, in Vegas, in New Orleans, in New England. That's if you're being charitable, I think. So where are the wins coming from? That's what you have to wonder.
What about you, Ryan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think unless they start the season on an unprecedented 4 or 5 game road stand, which is not obviously going to happen, then you have to really question. I mean, the way that this schedule is going to be balanced out, just what their record is going to be after the first, say, 5 or 6 games. I mean, again, unless you're playing all these teams like that are just conceivably winnable games, are all on the road, right? So it'll probably be again a healthy balance, as it usually is every year. But I remember there was a local beat guy that had said, I can't remember exactly who it was, but said that the Giants this year, if Brian Daboll got out to a slow start, like a winless start through the first X number of games, that his job could have been on the outs after that. But obviously they ended up winning in Seattle, and they got a win against Cleveland. So that kind of threw that out the window. But next year it's completely different, right? So any of these winnable games, I just don't think are going to happen early on. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch to see if the Daboll seat kind of scorches a little bit hotter early next season. And then, you're looking at whoever the OC is, if it's Kafka that returns, or whoever else that might fill that role. If they decide to move on from him, he's getting some head coaching looks, as we've seen in the past couple of days. Or if he just ends up as being someone else's OC. I mean, you really have to question whether that'll be the thing that happens. And then, as far as Shane goes, I mean, I know that's kind of a rarity. Obviously, the Jets did it this year, but it seems a little bit more rare in the NFL to move on from a GM mid-season. And that's just because of all the logistics with the scouting department and everything, all the notes there. Usually they'll say, get up to the draft and then take the notes from the GM, whatever the new regime that comes in. I think you're seeing this with the Patriots right now, that they'll probably move on from Elliott Wolf after this, after the draft. Whoever they hire, probably Mike Vrabel. Anyways, I can see Daboll certainly being moved on from early next season, and then I don't think Shane would be that far behind him, regardless if they take a quarterback or not.
I'm starting to think, what if this is 3D chess playing by John Mara? What if he knows that these guys really do stink? They don't draft. They sign a bridge quarterback to like a quarterback-friendly deal, where a team-friendly deal, where it's essentially a 1-year deal. They put some voidable years. They tank. They're so bad, and they wind up with Arch Manning the following year because they're so bad. Oh, no, wait, never mind. I'm waking up. It's just Giants. Never mind. They're not thinking that far ahead. I just don't know what the heck they're doing that one too. I can see Shane I can see them completely mismanaging this one. Shane Bowen becomes the interim head coach, and then this team's in free fall. I just don't know. You should have cut your losses while you're ahead of time, and just move on and get a fresh start and get this thing back, because you don't want to in New York, especially, you don't want to be second fiddle to the Jets. And I felt like that's what the Giants were last year. The Giants were second fiddle to the Jets. And that has to kind of gnaw at Mara when he was looking at outside, looking at all those empty seats in the stadium, seeing $13 tickets or dollar tickets, what have you, on there, the decrease in park and everything else. He knows it's lackluster right now. There's only so many Malik Neighbors jerseys you can sell, what have you. And I think if you're doing this quarterback a disservice already. If you fire both these guys after this season, because we saw Caleb Williams. Okay, here's a new system. Oh, by the way, you're gonna have to learn something completely new now that you're coach. That was our mulligan. Our bad. Learn this one. I don't know what they're doing in terms of that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people around the league are wondering what are they doing. But Now it's time to get into talking to some more personnel moves. The Giants are in the middle of the pack in terms of cap space, with the website Over the Cap placing them 15th, currently having $54.5 million at their disposal. Now, that total could go up if they decide to do some restructuring, move some contracts around, cut people, what have you, but that's where they currently sit right now. We know they don't need a quarterback because all three of their quarterbacks, including Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and Tim Boyle, technically are free agents. And you look at edge rusher Azeez Ojulari, Darius Slayton, they're free agents. Adoree Jackson as well, too. He's a free agent. Ryan, do you foresee these Giants re-signing any of these players?
I mean, maybe a handful of them, right? I mean, Darius Slayton's a guy that has expressed interest in potentially coming back, and I know a lot of people is well liked in there. Obviously, just won the Good Guy Award too. Drew Lock, maybe bring him back as a backup quarterback or bridge quarterback, what have you. But I mean, even he as a quarterback is kind of a wild card option. Tommy DeVito. Still kind of under contract there with the. I mean, Darryl can probably explain that better because it's the exclusive rights free agent though, so he's essentially still under the contract with the Giants. Other than that, no. I mean, Adoree Jackson, he was a backup this year really, and they didn't get him till late in the spring, so I don't really see that coming into fruition for them. Azeez Ojulari, like we were talking with him the other day, and talking about the upcoming free agency decision, and he's almost like laughing at it, like because he's like, hey, there's two guys there, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, that are your position, and so you say you want to come back, but why? And he's almost laughing, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, I'm not coming back, probably. So I don't know why they didn't just trade him at the deadline when he was starting to play better, but that's neither here nor there. No, so I mean, aside from a couple, maybe, and then DeVito, who's obviously still technically under contract there. I do not see them bringing many of these, if any, back.
Hey, what about you, Darryl? Do you see any of those guys returning to this team, this roster, and playing in 2025?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways, right? I mean, they could want to bring somebody back, but then the player could say, look, the position is crowded. I don't want to come back. That's Darius Slayton. That's Azeez Ojulari. And those are two big ones right there. I mean, obviously, quarterback will be, Drew Lock's not starting anywhere. He's going to be a backup. So he needs to decide whether that would be here or whether they want him or elsewhere. I think, Jamie Gillen, their punter, is a free agent. Will they decide to have him back? Greg Van Roten, who was a one-year guy, I don't think he'll be back. He's going on 35. Ryan mentioned Azeez Ojulari, and of course, Adoree Jackson's situation. They didn't even want Adoree Jackson back last offseason. They only signed him because things were so dire at cornerback. The one guy to look at is their strong safety, Jason Pinnock, who's a free agent for the first time. DeVito being and I'll get back to Pinnock, but DeVito being an exclusive rights free agent, all they have to do is offer him the minimum and he'll be back, and they can always cut him in camp. So he'll definitely be back. He's not really a free agent at all, but Pinnock is he's an all right starter. Next to a promising guy in Tyler Nubin, who they have cost control over through the rookie contract, of course. But when you look at Pinnock, do they want to pay a safety? Obviously, he's not going to get Xavier McKinney money, but you know that Joe Schoen doesn't really value the safety position as highly as some others. Of course, we all know he let the big time safety and big time running back in Saquon or in Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley walk, and both had great years. So I wonder, does he reevaluate that? Again, Pinnock not on the level of McKinney, but he's certainly an interesting one to watch. They don't have, again, when your team is this bad, your roster is this bad, you're probably not going to have a lot of good players, okay? And you're probably not going to have a lot of good players who are, as a result of that, pending free agents. And that's the situation the Giants are in. And the most notable guys that they do have, like I said, Slayton, Ojulari are, and Pinnock would be in that group, but Slayton and Ojulari are positions where they probably are looking around surely and saying, why would I even want to come back here? There's not going to be an opportunity for playing time. They've already invested a first round pick in Malik Neighbors, and they've invested money in Brian Burns and a big pick in Kayvon Thibodeau, who's going to be up for a new contract this offseason. I don't think he'll get that. They have to figure out his fifth-year option, too. He's due for the decision on that, and that's fully guaranteed now, of course. So that's sort of where I see things with their in-house guys.
You brought up Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley. I don't even know I think Joe Shane might just pass that game to this weekend and just say, you know what? Yeah, I'm not watching this. It's going to throw something at the TV. Is that one too? So he wants to keep the TV safe. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do in terms of that. Now, we look at that. We talked about in-house free agents that they have. Darryl, who do you think in terms of free agents that are out there that are going to or scheduled to be available right now? Obviously, teams can resign some of these guys or sign extensions, stuff like that. But who's a free agent that you would like to see the Giants go after?
Well, I think we'll just look at quarterback. I think that you could go down the rabbit hole of every, so many of these other positions that they have to address. Of course, so like just if you think about their depth chart, right? Like where do they have to address? I mean, quarterback, and we'll get back to that. Running back, they're probably all right there. Devin Singh, well, they maybe need to get a backup in, but Tyrone Tracy's their starter. They have Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson at receiver. Jalen Hyatt is not a long-term solution. Maybe they have to get another outside receiver. But they're not going to maybe invest big there. They like what they have, I presume, with Theo Johnson at tight end. So then it goes to their line, right? Like, what do they do on their line? They're kind of locked into, do they really want to go another year with John Michael Schmitz at center? I guess they're locked into him as a second-round pick. Jermaine Illuminor will be back at one tackle spot. Of course, Andrew Thomas, we know when he's healthy, he's great. They are stuck with another year of John Runyon because of the nature of the deal. They technically could move on from Illuminor. I don't know why they would need to. So they're probably going to have to go get a guard because either Runyon can play either side. But Greg Van Roten, of course, will probably not be back. So they'll have to figure that out. They're going to have to get another interior D lineman, because Raheem Nunez-Roches will probably be a salary cap casualty. They probably feel like they're all right at edge rusher. But, I mean, are they sold on Micah McFadden as the other inside linebacker next to Bobby Okereke, who they're stuck with because they redid his deal, Okereke. The secondary is, even though Drew Phillips showed promise as a slot corner and Newman at free safety promise, they have major issues at cornerback with Cordale Flott, outside cornerback, and Deonte Banks, who it looks like a first-round bust. So those are all positions they're either going to have to address in the draft or free agency. But in terms of like the one that everyone is wondering about, that would be quarterback. And I wrote something earlier this week, like, who is this magical quarterback solution that they're going to have? I mean, they may not be able to get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward because they're drafting third behind the Titans and Browns. But if you look at free agents, right, like, I don't know if Sam Darnold's going to shake free. They might franchise tag him. Would they, even they being the Vikings, would they want to trade JJ McCarthy? Why? Well, they don't have to, The big one to watch would be trading for Kirk Cousins, but he's got a no trade clause. That's worth remembering. Russell Wilson, does he stay in Pittsburgh? Derek Carr, did the Saints cut him? He doesn't want to take a pay cut. He'd be an interesting option. I know he took a lot of heat in New Orleans. But he's top 10. He's number 10 in quarterback rating each of the past 2 years. The other guys in free agency are your typical just kind of blah guys: Justin Fields, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones. Like, no, those guys aren't starters. So, yeah, no, the quarterback stuff is tricky. I mean, there are some options. Like, technically, Darnold is a free agent, right? Okay, you can work with him, but why in the world would the Vikings, who have a ton of cap space, let him walk? Why not just franchise tag him and also keep JJ McCarthy? So that's how I see it.
How about you, Ryan? Who's a projected free agent that you want to see them go after?
Yeah, I think guard is certainly one that Darryl mentioned it, but I think guard is definitely one that you have to consider. I know Trey Smith of the Chiefs is obviously going to be one of the top free agents out there this spring. He's one that maybe you throw a lot of money at, although you kind of have to wonder, like, does Shane, because Shane already tipped his hand in recognizing that he doesn't really value the running back or safety position. I know guard is probably on the offensive line one of the least valued kind of positions there. So if he's tipped his hand with those two position groups that are considered, not that important, quote unquote, in football, maybe he feels the same way about guards. But I think, Trey Smith certainly is one that he might look at. Another factor here is that, I mean, with Maris saying that he wants to, the reports came out that that it's pretty much playoff or bust for him. Shane kind of denied it. Mara really wouldn't speak to it, although he did say the patience line, which has a lot of people thinking. I wonder if there's kind of a big spending spree coming, right? they have, again, like you said, like around $53 million in cap space. I mean, do you throw that at a lot of these position needs that Darryl had mentioned? Do you look to find a corner? DJ Reed, I know he's on the market. I think he plays a little bit more slots though, and maybe you want Drew Phillips to develop there more. There's a couple other guys out there, Rasul Douglas, and then obviously the quarterbacks too, as Darryl mentioned. I mean, Darnold is the big one, right? But how much are you willing to give up for Darnold? Are you willing to give him, a contract that he might warrant this year after that season that he's had? Do you trust that Darnold is completely turned around, or is this year just all right, I'm in Kevin O'Connell's offense, and this is just what I am now. I doing well. I'm a product of this offense. And then he's going to turn into a pumpkin right when he gets back to potentially the Meadowlands here. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly going to be interesting to follow, especially because of that decree that Mara is saying that he's not feeling very patient. Basically, will we see a big spending spree, a desperate spending spree for a desperate GM?
Yeah, it's not a good spot to be in terms of free agency, but the draft is available to the Giants that they can use. And that's what we're going to turn our attention to next. That win against the Indianapolis Colts really hurt their prospects at the top pick. The Giants do have the third overall pick. They, along with to go with their own second and third round picks, all in the top 100, which is important in terms of talent wise. They also have 6 day 3 selections, including 3 fourth round picks. Maybe one's used to trade for a quarterback, a pro quarterback. We don't know yet, but we'll see that. I looked at Draft Tech the trade chart. The Jimmy Johnson started this chart is that each draft pick has a value and a potentially a sign. And if you look at what it needs for the Giants to move up to number 1 to the Titans spot, they would have to give up another first round pick, and that's it. But we know this is not a perfect world, and they would have to include probably another second or third round, potentially other picks to be able to get to the quarterback they want with the first overall pick. Ryan, I'll start with you on this one. Are you moving up in this draft to get the quarterback they want? Or would you even consider trading down back to, say, 6 to the Raiders, 7 to the Jets, or even 9 to New Orleans to pick up more selections and focus on signing a veteran quarterback?
See, I'm not doing it, but I don't know if if Schoen and Daboll really have a choice here. They want to get their guy, right? A reporter asked the other day if they were going to do any Hail Marys, right, to get this rebuild to be sort of a 1-year kind of turnaround here. And Shane denied it, but I mean, what choice does he have? He has to try and go out there and do kind of a 1-year rebuild, basically, because if not, he'll lose his job by the end of next year. Listen, the smart move is, like you said, to trade down because, and gather assets for the future. But if you're not the GM that's going to be making, that's going to be using those assets, using those draft picks, why would you care about what the future GM has to work with? I would certainly do it, but I'm obviously not in this desperate position. So I think that Shane is either going to trade up desperately with the Browns potentially to get the number 2 pick. I think that would be kind of a nightmare decision because I don't know that Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are necessarily worth the first round pick investment, especially with how terrible the Giants are projected to do next year with the schedule that we have talked about so much. But again, we're talking about a desperate GM here that might make a desperate call. And he's obviously been scouting Shedeur Sanders and a couple other members of the Giants front office have been scouting Cam Ward pretty heavily here. If they like these two guys, then they'll probably try to make these two guys work because the other options you have are, again, we just talked about the quarterbacks and free agency. Aside from Darnold, it's kind of just, your usual free agency crapshoot. And then Kirk Cousins, are you relying on Kirk Cousins? Do you trust that maybe another year removed from the Achilles injury that he'll be a little bit better? I don't know because he's still going to be up there in age and he still had a whole heck of a lot of interceptions this year. I just don't know what you can really trust anymore. There is no magical quarterback coming in unless for some reason, and this never really happens unless, Russell Wilson or, Matt Stafford several years ago. But these quarterbacks don't really demand trades like that in the NFL anymore. It doesn't seem like we've had one since the Russell Wilson one. So unless there's some magical quarterback that, again, requests a trade this offseason, I just don't see how that's going to happen. Yeah.
Hey, Darryl, okay, do you think Joe Shane's going to go Leroy Jenkins and just throw everything up to move up to number one? Or do you think they're going to move back, to trade back and sign that veteran quarterback and trade back and fill up those other picks?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, the part of that is like free agency comes before the draft, so you have to figure out. The Titans are obviously at one. I think they're drafting a quarterback there. They're not trading back. The Browns would be the team that could trade back, and the Giants would only be trading up one spot, but they'd be doing it to box out other teams that could move up. You're thinking about the two teams would really be Vegas at 6 and the Jets at 7. They need quarterbacks. Like, would they trade up to 2? Like if you're Cleveland, you could do that deal with the Giants. The Giants move up. They get, say, either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Cleveland moves back to 3, and this is only if they want to do another year with Deshaun Watson, right? They're stuck with him for 2 more years, no matter what. And they move back to 3, and they get Travis Hunter. So that's that scenario. I think that's certainly possible. Or the Giants just decide, look, this isn't a great quarterback class. We're gonna sign a free agent. We're going to go after one of the guys either in free agency or via a trade, and they make that move in free agency. Obviously, that will tell, like in March, be very telling about what they'll do. I think they'll bring in a guy and then also draft a guy, right? Now, if they bring in a high-profile guy, they're not going to draft somebody until perhaps later, right? If they bring in a Justin Fields or whatever, that signals that they are all in for trying to draft a quarterback. That could be risky, again, because it's out of their control for whether the Titans and Browns, what they want to do. I think the Titans are going to take a quarterback at 1. They're not going to trade that pick. The Browns, we'll see. That's the wild card because of the nature of this crazy Deshaun Watson contract that he's under contract guaranteed fully for the next 2 years with a cap hit of $71 million each year. I mean, that's makes it pretty crippling to bring in a rookie quarterback and build around the rookie quarterback's affordable contract when you got that kind of cap hit. Again, it's a really tough spot because the Giants beat the Colts. They had an opportunity to control their destiny, get the number 1 pick, be in control of whatever they wanted to do there. And now they're at the mercy of a couple other teams. And again, they have to make a decision in March, mid-March, free agency, about what they're going to do at a position that could be significantly impacted by what happens a month and a half later in April. So it's ultimately a bad year to be desperate for a quarterback in this draft, given the nature of this draft class. So yeah, that's how I see the potential lay of the land going there.
Nice. I'm thinking about this. I wonder if they do make a trade here. I just think it's more of a trade down because I can see them attempting to move up and they get rebuffed a couple of times. Mickey Loomis is always a wild card with the Saints because we've seen him in the past overpay for certain guys to move up to get players like Olave, what have you. The Saints to me are like the biggest wild card in all this because they just say, you know what? We'll just throw whatever we can and just let the chips fall. I look at them as potentially that one. And we know the Jets, whoever the new GM is, maybe they got a mandate to try to make a splash as well too and endear themselves with Winnie Johnson, and maybe they move up. But the Saints to me are the weird one. I think it's a perfect opportunity for them to move back, sign or trade for a quarterback, put them up there, and then that you're giving yourself pieces to operate with. I think that's what Mara might tell him to do. Like when they tell him to plan, at least if you trade back, you get pieces for next year in order if both these guys are going again, you have something to work with in terms of that. But so it's going to be a fun thing to watch how they maneuver how Joe Shane tries to maneuver up and down the board depending on who's available and what have you. Because as you guys mentioned, this class is it's like it's all right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if Milroe falls out of the first round. I don't foresee it right now heading into. I don't foresee him falling out of the first round. I think he's a late first round pick, but if he falls out in the second, third, then I'm really thinking about, okay, maybe you see what you have there. But it's also a second or third round pick, second round pick. You don't want to burn that early on. But yeah, it's not a lot of options to go with here, and it's a little rough to go with. But moving on we reached the end of the show, and we want to thank everybody for listening there. We're going to add one more segment here. We want to add some levity to this show and before we close it out. It's the end of the season, end of a year for the Giants, and it's when it comes to end of the year things, I always remember those late year countdowns you see, like whether it's Billboard, and depending on your era, whether Casey Kasem, Rick Dees, Ryan Seacrest, someone else, what have you, they used to count down like and have the number one song to remind you that. So you know what? I figured we stick to a music. Darryl, I'll start with you on this one. If there was a popular song to describe this 2024 Giants season, what is it and why?
I will give you an album, and I'm not really up on pop music now, Chris. I'm an old man, so here's one from. I will tell you, when this album came out, I had it on cassette tape, which was a while ago. You guys can look up what cassette tapes are.
Dude, I'm 40. I'm right not too far away from you.
Ryan can.
I have to.
This album came out in 1994, February 1st, 94. And it is the album that made Green Day super popular, and it is Dookie. So you know, look up what Dookie means for yourself. That's a very nice way of saying what this season was for the Giants. So, since it's a family show, I think we can get away with saying that word. But there you go. That's that's how. I mean, and I think you asked Brian Daboll, a guy who he's not that much older than me. Brian Daboll is very familiar with that album, I'm sure. 49 years old, right? So he would tell you the same, I'm sure. But that sums up this season.
That's good. I forgot I haven't heard that word in so long. It's great. It's great. Ryan, what song title do you have that would describe? Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I threw off that one. Ryan, what title would you have describing this 2024 season?
I have two, actually. So I'm going to
nice.
go. Mine are actually older than Darryl's, so I mean, you know, I get all the young jokes here, but I got "I'm Bad" by LL Cool J, and then I have another one that's in a completely different genre than that. I have Jet by Paul McCartney, because this season has been very Jetsian for the New York Giants here, and it's become quite the clown show. So there are my two.
Oh, those are great. Oh man. That's great. Sorry, I like those things. You know, I've sat and thought about this all, and I'm still tough because it's crazy. Gnarls Barkley, I throw that too. There's a lot of songs I want to say that are not for a family show, but it can't do that. So I have to eliminate half the hip hop albums I know over top of that in terms of that. But yeah, I'll end on that because I want to keep us on the air and keep us making episodes available for that. Well, I'm going to say this for everybody out there, for all the listeners who are out there, for Darryl, Ryan, I appreciate the work you guys have put in this season in order to give us all this news. I know it had to be tough watching what transpired and reporting everything on that. So I appreciate you guys for the work that you've guys done. And I appreciate you guys for coming on and doing this super show. I hope that everybody out there enjoyed the information that these guys gave. You can continue to watch the off-season ongoings on NJ.com/Giants. And there will definitely be some news coming out here and there, what have you, especially when it comes to the free agency and draft. And these guys will have all the info about it and give you astute analysis. So for Darryl Slater and Ryan Novozinsky, I'm Chris Franklin. Everybody have a good one. See ya.